Hello, welcome to Poppin Predictions, where we believe movies aren't over at the end, but are meant to be continued. You're here with Andy and Marqueze, where we ponder what happens in a story once the credits begin to roll. So Andy, why don't you tell us about today's episode?
Yeah, so on today's podcast, we will be reviewing an episode from the Black Mirror series, Striking Vipers. In this episode, two estranged college friends reunite, triggering a series of events that alter their lives forever. These two friends begin having virtual sex in a virtual reality fighting game. And as always, spoilers ahead. So hey Marquise, why don't you kind of give us kind of like a rundown on this episode?
Yeah, so this is the first episode in the 5th season of Black Mirror. This is the first of 3 episodes, and also my favorite episode from the series. So what happens is this episode is kind of, as Andy mentioned, these two friends from college are reunited. One is, married, has kids, all this stuff like that, just living your normal dad life. And they go pretty hard to portray him as just like living your normal average dad in suburbia life, The other one is living, like the Playboy life, has this super nice apartment with all the cool stuff. There's even like a pinball machine in there or whatnot. He has all the latest games, he's going on dates with like, super beautiful women and like all that stuff, So they go through different styles of life, but they reunite at a birthday party, and the friend who's like the Playboy, and his name is Carl. So the friend who's kind of like the Playboy or whatever, he goes to Danny's birthday party, and they haven't seen each other in years. And he gives Danny a present. And this present is just a video game called Striking Vipers. It's a video game they played back in college, but it's an updated version with a virtual reality aspect to them. And so they go and they start, they play this game. And as they're fighting in this game, so like Carl always uses this female character, and it showed it even back in like college. He uses this female character for the fighting game. Danny uses this male character. So in the game, when they actually start playing in the virtual reality game, Carl mentions that all sensations emulated, and so you could feel everything, feel every touch, every sensation, all that. And so they're sitting there fighting, and then all of a sudden, there's like a really sexually charged moment, and, they start kissing, blah, 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 blah. And then, as you could imagine, this leads to some very deep issues, One of being, is like, Danny's married, so is he cheating now on his wife? Is he, is he gay now that he's, in a romantic relationship with his best friend, or not best friend, but with his ex-best friend or whatever, a close friend, but he's only into his friend when his friend is a female in the game, so he's actually just into that female character more so. Like it's all this like, wait, how do I navigate this world? Because like it'd be easier for me to say, yes, I am cheating on my wife if I am, going out, if I'm having an affair with somebody or whatever, but I'm just having sex with this character in the game, so I'm not really having sex, and like it just kind of gets to the point of like what, but it is still taking him away from his wife, as you see in the episode, that he kind of gets more distance from his wife the more he indulges in this game with his friend. And so he really has to kind of go through some stuff in his head of like, am I actually cheating on my wife? Am I not? And when I'm doing okay? And it's just like a whole lot of things. So I would say that's the general kind of plot of the episode. I did think this was the best plot of the latest season of Black Mirror. If you're a Black Mirror fan, a lot of people did not like the 5th season. They didn't think it was great, but I thought it was okay. But I thought this was definitely a great episode. I thought this episode was easily comparable to some of the earlier ones, which I'm sure we'll do in the future. But yeah, this was a great episode. I thought the casting was great. All the, actors did their part. Pacing was fine. Didn't even notice that. Emotionally, I thought this film was really good for 2 reasons. One, emotionally, it kind of pushes and pulls you in the right areas of like, oh man, like he should feel guilty for, doing this to his wife. And then on the other end, it's kind of like, Yeah, but like you're in this world where like there's no consequences.
Right.
Like how are you supposed to not indulge in a world where there's no consequences? But as we see, there actually are consequences that are happening in the real world. He's becoming more and more distant from his wife and all this stuff like that.
Right.
So like, and then he has to start trying to redefine his sexuality, trying to figure out if he's gay or not. Like there's so many questions that this raises, and the fact that I personally do believe that this is 100% possible in the future,
Right.
especially
Yeah.
with the way technology is going. I mean, I could see something like that. I could see this being like a NASA problem that people have to start dealing with
Yeah. No.
within
Right.
like 10 to 15 years. Like seriously, like not even a joke. Like how social media came and people didn't understand the problem social media was going to bring, and then they had to start figuring that out. I think this is the same thing. I think they're going to create virtual reality games that are so good that it feels like life. There feels like there's no difference. And then when it gets to that point, like as with most technological innovations, the first thing that's going to happen to it is it's going to be used with sex, and it's just going to be very I think a lot of people, if games are able to do this, I think it's going to be a lot of people who are going to be in this odd situation.
So I definitely kind of agree with that, and I kind of want to go back to some of the points you were talking about. I definitely feel like so for those who have never seen the Black Mirror series, like Black Mirror. It's kind of like that futuristic. I've always thought of it as like the futuristic Twilight Zone, where it kind of gives you scenarios that
I've actually never seen Twilight Zone, to be honest. Yeah. I've always wanted to. Never watched
Twilight Zone has some pretty funny episodes. If you have some time, sidebar here, but if you have some time, there's an episode of Twilight Zone where there's this person that went through face reconstructive surgery to make them beautiful. And spoiler alert for this one, but what ends up happening is that the person, when they unravel the person's face from all the bandages, the person has a really beautiful face, but the doctors in the civilization are all pigs. So like the person is ugly because they don't fit in with society. But from us, like it's a really, like the person was really beautiful. But getting back to this, you mentioned that like people don't really understand technology when they first use it, and I think that especially in regards to social media, and I could definitely see that in today's day and age, whenever we get introduced new things, like there's never like a how-to guide. Like there's like certain things there's instructions, but like when social media was first introduced, like there was no like how to use social media. Like everyone just made it for their own, and you're seeing kind of the ripple effect nowadays where depression is a lot higher up. There's a lot less social interaction with others. People don't know how to interact with each other. So when you have this game here, this game kind of takes place 20, 30 years in the future, I would imagine. Danny is really confused because there's a pivotal scene in the episode when he wants to meet up with Carl in person. And the reason they want to meet up is because Danny needs to know if it's because he's gay or if there are feelings or if it's the game. And they share a kiss. And at the end of the kiss, Danny just kind of pauses and says nothing. Like he says the word nothing. For clarification, he doesn't say nothing. He just says the word nothing. And it's almost as if he wanted it. Like he wanted to feel feelings. Like it's almost as if he wanted it to be that easy, like you were saying. Like because then it would make sense that like why he needs to go to the game. But in reality, like he's just trying to figure out what his identities are and trying to figure out sort of like why he's feeling this way, which you never really get that answer in this episode, like why he is so attracted to Carl in a virtual sense, but not in real life.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like for Carl must be even like more confusing because at least Danny, when he's in and outside the game, he's still a male character.
Right.
Carl, on the other hand, inside a game is a female character. And so when he's experiencing all these sexual sensations and whatnot, and orgasms or whatever, he's experiencing it, as a woman. And he did actually tries to describe it in one scene when Danny asked him in the game, like, how does it feel, being like this? And, Carl seems to really enjoy it, and it just kind of feels very satisfying to him. But then Carl goes back into his real life, and there's no evidence that Carl wants or even thinks about wanting to change his body in the real world.
No.
Not a single bit of evidence for that. Like, he seems perfectly fine with how he is in the real world and sleeping with models or whatever, but in the game, he gets an additional something that he can't get in the real world. And so he keeps needing this and keeps kind of asking Danny for this. And so for Carl's the one I'm really trying, I really imagine it's a big identity crisis of, what, where do I go? Like, how do I see myself? What is it that I actually want? One scene, he mentions how it's specifically, so here's what gets confusing. It's not even that Carl is just into the character that Danny is playing as in the game. Carl says at one point he's tried to play that character just as the computer, and it's just kind of like a dud. He's tried to play with other people who play as Danny's character, and that still doesn't work for him. He's tried having sex with plenty of just other random characters in the game, including a polar bear he mentions. But it just, none of it works for him. It's all just that he needs the specific character, and he needs a specific character played by Danny in order to get this sexual satisfaction that he seeks in this game.
Now, is it this? Now, you mentioned it's this specific character played by Danny. Is it the character that he needs played by Danny, or is it Danny himself? Because because he mentioned in that scene that he's had other players play as the character. The fighter's name is Lance. He's had other characters play as Lance, and it just doesn't do it for him. And so I would argue that it has to be Danny. It has to be Danny, which then I think kind of segues into a question I want to ask you is would you consider this cheating?
Mm-hmm. Before I get to that question, I do want to answer that question, but right before I answer that, you actually do have a good point that a lot of it is based on Danny, because I noticed this the second or third time I finally started watching the episode, but that in all the earlier scenes before they actually meet up in virtual reality, you could tell that Carl has a deep connection to Danny. He's physical with them in just terms of touching or playing around. Right. He likes being close to him. The episode where the scene where they reunite and Danny reaches out for a handshake, Carl slaps it away and is come and give me a hug. Carl does have a natural affection towards Danny, but there's just no hint that's romantic. It's just a general I like you, bro. It's a general affection. It doesn't turn romantic until the game, but they are hinting that Carl has a bigger affection to Danny seemingly than Danny, because at no point do you see Danny doing that to him at all. It's only Carl ever doing that to Danny.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so your question, is this cheating? That is a huge question. And I guarantee you that's going to be one. Once this stuff actually starts happening for real, it's going to be a huge thing. I can guarantee it's going to be a huge thing. I feel like this is, I would say, almost pretty spot on with the same question of for when people ask, well, I don't know. It's along the lines of the same question of is watching porn cheating? I would say it's not the same, because technically you are actually connecting with a very specific person for this. But the fact that it's all virtual and you're not physically doing anything, is where the question kind of lies. And I feel people will decide it based on the fact does emotion is emotion the main factor? Because physically, so as you'll see if you watch this episode, physically all Carl or Danny are doing is just sitting on the couch. You know, in the respective, not even in the same room, they're just on the couch with their eyes rolled on the back of their head playing this virtual game. And so physically, neither of them have done anything. But emotionally, 100%, you could argue that Danny's cheating on his wife, which, to be honest, we have not mentioned at all. I kind of feel bad for that. Andy, do you want to talk about Danny's wife? Because I really feel like her character and like her needs and her household, like, it's very important.
Yeah, so Danny's wife plays a very pivotal character in this entire episode. She's the one that kind of initiates the reunion by inviting Carl to Danny's 38th birthday, unknowingly for Danny. And Theo is a very, very beautiful, very attractive woman. And she, she's a mother. She's a mother. She is 10 years into a marriage with Danny, and they're trying to have a second child. And while Carl and Danny are having their sessions on virtual reality, Theo, the name of the wife, is trying to start to expand their family and have a second child. And you'll see Danny come to bed saying he's too tired over and over again, constantly using that excuse. And you see that take a mental and physical toll on Theo. There's a scene where she's in the bathroom and she's examining her body, and she's kind of like, did I lose it? Like, am I not attractive anymore? Like, am I not beautiful? They go out to dinner on their wedding anniversary, and Theo calls Danny out on it, and she goes, you don't touch me anymore, you don't kiss me anymore, like, kind of figure out what's going on. Before Danny shows up to the restaurant, Theo gets hit on by another guy, and she has to tell the guy that she is married, and she told Danny that she could have cheated on him. She could have she could have left with this guy, but she didn't. And Theo leaves the restaurant and sees a guy and girl making out on the street, and she kind of looks over to them, and you can kind of think one of two paths. One, she could be thinking like, why are these two people doing that? But two, you could kind of think to yourself like, maybe she's thinking about when she was younger, and like Danny would be all over her, sort of a thing. And so
you could tell she definitely misses that passion.
Yeah, she definitely misses that passion. And I think something that is important to mention throughout this whole episode is that like it's clear that Danny does love Theo. Theo clearly loves Danny. Like, there's no super huge tension. She doesn't even get suspicious of him playing the game. Like, she doesn't even think of that at all. So like, there's really no, like, if Danny never told, we actually don't know for sure what Danny told Theo, but we know that he had to mention something, because at the end of the episode they have this arrangement where on Danny's birthday he can go into virtual reality with Carl, and she can take her wedding ring off and go to bars and get hit on by guys. I personally think that this is cheating. I know that there was no physical touching. You mentioned that there's like the emotional piece that Carl and Danny have together. But sometimes when you cheat, like, I'm not speaking from experience. I will say that right here. I am not speaking from experience.
Let's make this clear.
But sometimes when people cheat, like, there's not even necessarily that emotional connection. Maybe there's an emotional disconnection with their partner, but there's not necessarily an emotional connection to the person that they're doing it with. Now, in this example here, when we had Danny and Carl, like, it's hard for me to say that it's not cheating, especially when Carl says, like, it has to be you. Like, I only get satisfaction, I only get joy out of this when I'm doing it with you. Mm-hmm. And the fact that there's this arrangement that Danny gets this free pass once a year, it's not a healthy relationship. Like I don't think that this is fair. Like I think that Carl doesn't grow or doesn't get any help from this. He keeps waiting for that once a year mark when he can have this session with Danny. Danny is able to kind of suppress all of his urges until his birthday, but his urges are still there. And Theo gets a complete free pass when she can do whatever she wants, which, I mean, considering the situation, it's completely justified and fair. But it's not sustainable, at least not in my opinion. I don't think it's sustainable. So even though there's no physical touching, they're in different places, they're doing different things. Like it's still cheating. And the fact that Danny was super secretive about it only to me confirms that it is, because he was honest at the end, but throughout the entire episode, like he is being completely dishonest. He had multiple opportunities throughout the episode to break the news to Theo of what's happening, but he chooses not to, especially in the restaurant. Like the restaurant scene was like the perfect time for him to just say, hey, this is what's happening. But he waits until the very end of the episode to try to share what's going on. So to me, it's clearly cheating.
I mean, I would agree with you, to be honest. Like I'm of the mindset, also someone who has never cheated on somebody. Let me make that clear first of all too. But I'm on the mindset that, I mean, to be honest, I would actually put emotional cheating as a higher violation than just physical from my personal view, which is 100% what's going on here. Because physical is a slip up, like actually it actually was a slip up, and even in the game, right. Danny did not come in there with any sexual mindset. Yeah. We don't know about Carl, but at least with Danny, we know for sure he didn't come in there with any sexual mindset. He never tried for any of this. It literally just, they happened to be really close to each other in the game, and then bam, just this energy took over or whatever. So it really was kind of a slip up. If that would have happened and then he would have just stopped and really cut it off, that'd be one thing. But he kept falling into it and kept doing it. And so I do feel like when you develop an incredibly strong emotional connection, and that emotional connection is pulling him away from his wife, like his wife is like, you don't touch me anymore. You don't put your hand on my back. You don't brush me when you walk past me. Like, you don't kiss me. Like, it is truly the emotional connection he has with Carl in the game really, really, really actually affects his real life with Theo, his wife. And so I would 100% say it's cheating too. And to kind of get into, our, to be continued, part of this is, as Andy said, this ends with this kind of weird thing to where Theo was getting the short end of the stick, I would say, when they were actually having this relationship. Theo was the one feeling unwanted. She wasn't able to get pregnant because her husband wasn't sleeping with her, and like all the stuff like that. It was Carl and it was Danny getting what they want. But for how this episode ends, by far Carl's the one getting the short end of the stick.
Oh, for sure.
Like Danny seems to have it the best by far. He seems to be the biggest one in the situation, I would say, is because at no point do we see Danny even really want this. Like when Theo, his wife, first comes to him and says that there's a problem, like, you haven't, shown any affection towards me, he cuts it off seemingly pretty easy. Like at no point do you see him really distressed once he cuts it off. He cuts it off. Right. He gets his wife pregnant. They have a kid. 9 months go by. Fine. It's not until Carl just forces himself back into his life again, and then all this stuff like that. So Carl's the one who's really wanting this more so than Danny. Danny likes it, but he can live without it. It's more just a temptation, whereas for Carl it seems more like an addiction. And so that being said, when you get to their new kind of agreement where on Danny's birthday that, Theo could go out and flirt or whatever, and then he and Carl could like do their thing in the game. It seems like since Carl was the one that really wanted the relationship in the first place, it sucks for him that he gets to do this one day out the entire year.
Right.
there's points in the episode where it shows him not being able to think, not being able to sleep, not being able to enjoy his dinner, not being able to enjoy dates. Like he can't do any of that because he's no longer connected with uh Danny for like 9 months or a year, however long it is. Whereas with so if that was the case, one day a year would not cut it. So to me, if I had to pick a flaw in this episode, that ending's the biggest flaw, where it's just like they try to make it like there's a happily ever after, which is not typical for Black Mirror episodes if you watch the show, but they try to make it like it's a happily ever after, and in reality, like this is the worst thing for Danny. Like he gets to just live this fantasy like one day out the entire year, but it seems like he really actually needs this, and he really actually did have an emotional connection. So it seems like he's just kind of being toyed with and played with, even though they try to make it seem like he's happy. In real life, I do not think he would be happy. Therefore, I easily within like a year, and I even going a full 2 years, like within a year or year and a half, I see this crumbling. I see Carl once again going back to Danny being like, I need more. I can't just have you one day a year, you know, like I can't, like, I'm craving this relationship. I'm craving this connection with you. And I think that he's going to go back to Danny saying that. And then him and Danny are going to get in another argument or fight. And then all three of them are going to have to rework this relationship again. But what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree. You know, when you watch Black Mirror, there's been a couple of episodes. I think of USS Caliber. I think of
That's a great one.
Yeah, it was a good one. I think of, I don't remember the name of the episode, but it was actually made by the same director of this one, where the two females fall in love with each other, but one is dying.
San Junipero?
Yes, that one.
Yeah.
The director actually made both of these episodes.
Oh, okay.
Like there have been a couple of episodes where like something happens and people end up in the machine. So I don't want to go down that track of just saying like, yeah, there'll be a glitch in the system and Danny will be stuck in the game forever, or Carl will be stuck in the game forever. But like realistically, with how this show works, like that could be something that happens is like they get into a huge argument, and they could be either Danny and Carl, Danny and Theo. I don't think Carl and Theo would get into much of an argument. I never got that impression that they would get.
That never happened. I know. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't see that ever happening.
So it could be like a Danny and Carl or a Danny and Theo gets into an argument, and then somebody gets stuck in the game forever, because that's just how Black Mirror works. You know. Yeah, I definitely agree that like there could be a breakdown in this arrangement that they have. Maybe it turns murderous. Like maybe Danny is so tired of having to deal with this that he murders Carl, or maybe the only way that he can, maybe Carl murders Theo because he's just tired of this one day a year scenario that they have here. And he thinks that maybe if he murders Theo, that he can have more days with Danny in a virtual setting.
Another thing we didn't consider, what if, they only played a game on that, you know, are they played a game on that one day in the year, but they're also doing it outside of that too. Like there's a decent chance that Carl and Danny continue their relationship, and like, they make a big deal out of it. Like, oh yeah, you know, we get to do it on, you know, Danny's birthday. But like in reality, they're meeting up once a week, you know, or once a month behind Theo's back.
That's fair. I disagree.
Because I mean, the whole time it happened in the first place was behind her back anyway. She didn't notice in the first place, and so there's no reason like they couldn't keep doing that.
I disagree, and I don't think that would happen. I think this thing is strictly virtual.
No. Sorry, I mean virtual, but I mean like they keep doing the virtual meets.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought you meant like they meet up physically.
No. I mean, like in the game, they played a game like once a week.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure.
Like
they could definitely break this arrangement and meet up once a week and just.
Theo doesn't know about it.
Theo doesn't know. The thing that kind of makes that difficult is that Danny and Theo, like what you see in that last scene when the arrangement starts is Theo has the Striking Vipers headset and Danny has
That's
her wedding bachelor.
right.
So he'd have to, like, not to say that this is out of the realm.
I was about to say, Danny's a grand. He could buy another copy.
I don't know how these machines work. Maybe once one machine's connected, that's it. But that would be really crappy design. For one headset to work for one person. But yeah, I could definitely see this happening with more than one person. Something else that might be interesting, which might be the way that this kind of saves the arrangement, it maybe even makes it even more complicated, is if Theo one day decides, you know what, let me give it a try. Like, let me see what it's like.
Ooh, I like where you're going.
In this Striking Vipers reality. And then, Danny and Theo try it by themselves. Maybe their sessions are so much better than Danny's and Carl's because of the fact that, like, it's real, both in real life, and then they'd having it in this virtual setting. Like, maybe that ignites some extra passion in their relationship that Danny doesn't even want to have it with Carl anymore. Or maybe Carl has develops strong connections to Theo, and then Danny gets screwed out of any sort of gets left out of.
That'd be a wild part too. That should really happen. That'd be wild, yo.
Yeah, because I think that, like, that would be the next step. Is like Theo is just like not feeling any passionate. Maybe Theo is like, let me try what you're doing to see, like, if I enjoy it, just so I can maybe connect with you more, because there was some connection problems between the two of them throughout the episode. Maybe her trying his hobby, she does it better than him. Maybe Carl likes it more from her instead of from Danny, and then that creates some complications.
No, I mean, that's all valid, yo. I think if Theo ended up trying the game and then she gets her own relationship in the game, or, like, I think what would have been a more realistic ending is if Theo tried the game too. Theo has her fun in the game with other people. Danny has his fun with Carl in the game, and then, like, whenever he wants, and then, but when it comes to real life, Danny and Theo reserve for each other. Like, to me, that would have been a much more realistic, happy ending if they wanted to go that route. Because then it seems at that point everyone's needs are getting met, whereas in the version they put, Carl's needs are not getting met. Once a year with this person are not meeting your needs, especially with how bad he was, like, itching for it earlier on. And so that was only, like I said, unbelievable thing earlier. But yeah, that would be wild if Theo started playing it, and then you could really add in a whole new dynamic.
Yeah. So, kind of getting here towards the end, what sort of, you mentioned earlier this is one of your favorite, if not your favorite, episodes of Black Mirror, definitely your favorite from the final season. What are your recommendations for this one? Like,
yeah, so like I said, this is one of my favorite. I would say this is easily top. Actually, I don't know. There's good episodes.
That's a bold claim.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna say it's top 5 because, like, White Christmas, USS Callister, the one with the kid and his computer. I can't remember the name of that episode for the life of me. Okay, it might be top 5. I'm not sure, but it's definitely the best one of the 5th season. Just because once again, I like things that seem very plausible. Out of all the Black Mirror episodes, in terms of plausibility, I'd give this a top 3 or 4. I'd give this a top 3 or 4 within the next, 10 years. Like, I truly think you could have something like this within 10 years.
Right. I mean, you have VR headsets going on right now, so it's definitely not out of the realm of possibility.
The only thing I would say that stops this is like I don't know how much our audience too about, like, the company Neuralink with Elon Musk, but, like, that company, like, literally what he's trying to do is create chips that you could put inside your brain, or that attach to your brain, and that could fix all types of brain related diseases and whatnot, but pretty much start using computers to start really affecting what's going on with your brain from the inside out. And so having something like that Well, I mean, basically in this episode, they put something on the side of the head that controls their brain that allows them to do this. And so the fact that Elon Musk's company is already developing this, I feel is just kind of like this really is like just 10 years away, this is very possible. And so, yeah, so all that to say, I recommend this episode, especially since the first season got, a lot of negative reviews, or this season did. I think that this is by far the best in the season, and I do think it's at least a top 10 episode of Black Mirror. And I think it puts up questions, and we mentioned a lot of them, but you could probably come up with even more of questions just to sit there and think through. What do you consider cheating in a relationship? How do you look at emotional relationships? How do you look at simply physical ones? How do you look at just friendships in general? How do you handle conflict with your friend? Like, there's so many questions that could come up from this episode that I think it's really good to kind of like just philosophize and think,
or
so
even just like gender identity, like sexual, not gender identity, but like sexual identity. Just like, how do you like identify who your partners are? It kind of opens up a new realm of possibilities. Like, maybe it opens up the fact that people can be straight in real life but might be gay in the virtual setting, or maybe even be trans in the virtual setting but a hetero in real life. So it definitely kind of creates like a new kind of identity factor that you need to consider as well.
Yeah. What about you? You recommend this?
Yeah, I definitely recommend this. I agree that it's definitely one of the top 10 episodes of the series. I disagree with you that it's the best episode of the 5th season, and I know that this might shock you, but I really liked the last one with Miley Cyrus when it proposed. I think that
the one that got the most hate.
The one that got the most hate. Maybe it's just because I'm not a conformer like everyone. No, I think that this one might have been tied or a close second to the Miley Cyrus episode. I'm not a Miley Cyrus fan. I don't dislike her. I'm just not a fan of her. But I think that for the series itself, like, it answered a bunch of questions while creating some new ones. And so I thought it was a pretty cool that episode was a pretty cool one. But in terms of like plausibility as well as like kind of like future tech, like, definitely did this one really well. I think that it's sci-fi enough so that you're not like, this could happen today, but it's realistic enough that you can see it happening, just like how we've been talking about. So definitely strongly recommend this one. In terms of our rating system, so for our new viewers, we have this theme here where we kind of look at popcorn sizes. So small popcorn means it wasn't that great, and we have so small, medium, large, and big bucket. And if you get the big bucket, like, we think that you're 10 out of 10, like, super amazing, you did a fabulous job. I'm going to give this episode of Black Mirror a large bucket of popcorn, large bag of popcorn. I like the overall plot. I like a lot of the placing. I like the episode's kind of futuristic elements of it. I think something that would have pushed us into like a big bucket sort of thing is if it kind of delved a little bit more into the impact that this had on Theo, because it kind of just left it as like a physical sort of thing, but didn't really touch on like the emotional side of things. But yeah, definitely a very solid episode, giving it a large bag of popcorn. What about you, Marquise?
Yeah, I was thinking the same. I was like, I like it a lot, but for me, I gotta reserve big bucket for like something like very like just out of this world, mind blowing, Which, I mean, there are probably episodes of Black Mirror that, like, maybe 2 or 3 of them that I'd probably give big bucket, to be honest. But we'll see. We'll see in the future. We'll see. But yeah, I think I give this a large because, I mean, it's still solid. Like, the ending is the only part that falls apart, but it's a solid episode. And like, I love things that drive questions. And for me, this drives a lot of questions, a whole lot of them. And so I would give this a large.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what did you think of our continuation of Black Mirror Striking Vipers? Did you agree with what we thought? Did you disagree? Let us know. Why don't you go ahead and give us a follow on Twitter and Instagram at Poppin Predictions, and let us know what your thoughts and how we think we should continue, how this episode should have continued. If you have any recommendations for other Black Mirror episodes or movies that we should watch, just let us know. Marquise, you have any final thoughts?
That's all. I think you said it yourself.
Cool. Awesome. All right. Peace.
Have a good one, y'all. 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 Have a good one, y'all.